Does your animation look totally dope when you're watching it through the viewport, but as soon as you look through your cameras, it looks kinda boring? I'm about to give you the DL on how to use your camera in 3D to get some amazing, professional, dramatic, sick-looking shots. Understand that your 3D camera needs to be treated the same way as a real-world camera. Just because you have the power to do anything with it doesn't mean that you should. With great power comes great, you know the rest. So firstly, let's address the basics of shot types and techniques. Very important for understanding the story and conveying the right message to your audience. Examine your intention behind the shot first, before you decide on angles and techniques and all that other stuff. What are you hoping to convey with your shot? Is one of your characters dominant while another is subordinate? That will help decide your composition and your staging, like having the dominant character in the foreground while the subordinate character is in the background. We're using perspective to make the dominant character look bigger and more important. The more powerful character could stand over the weaker. In terms of camera angles, we could use a POV of looking up at the dominant character from a low angle, with a wide-angle lens and some depth of field, and then switch to looking down at the subordinate character from a high angle in the next shot. If you don't understand those terms too well or the decisions behind using those techniques, hopefully you will by the end of this video. I've done videos on these subjects before, camera shot types and angles and composition and how you would use them to convey your message, so check those out if you haven't yet. So I'll run through these basic techniques as a refresher, but I'm not going to go super in depth since I have covered them before. Most commonly used is zoom, which I'm sure most people know about and gives us the impression that we're moving closer to or further away from our subject. This is achieved by adjusting the lens's focal length. A pan, or panning, is when the camera moves or rotates horizontally on a central axis from a fixed position. A tilt is when the camera is in a fixed position and moves vertically on its axis, like someone looking up or down. A dolly is when a camera is on a track and moved on that track to create a smooth horizontal or vertical motion towards or away from our subject. Different to a zoom in that the camera is physically moving closer or further away. A dolly zoom is when the camera is doing its dolly thing, but at the same time, zooming in the opposite direction. Tracking is when the camera follows a subject. A pedestal is the movement of the actual height of your camera, so it keeps the same angle, but physically moves up or down. Now, apart from these techniques, we also have the shot types or angles, which are very powerful in storytelling. They help to set the mood, maintain your focal point, and connect with your audience. So these are things like an establishing shot, which is typically a wide or extreme wide shot, which will be used to orient the audience and familiarize them with the environment, location, and time, as well as the mood, to give them some context for the scene. A full body shot is self-explanatory, and it's good for showing a character's actions and body language rather than focusing on their facial animation and emotions. A close-up, however, is great for showing facial animation and emotions. An extreme close-up is great for drama, but should not be used a lot because it's for very particular purposes. A high-angle shot looks down at your subject, often used to make them seem vulnerable or weak. A low-angle shot does the opposite, and can serve to make your subject appear more powerful or confident. An over-the-shoulder is from behind a character looking over their shoulder. It usually frames the subject in a medium or close shot and is great for establishing which characters are talking to each other and making us feel like more of a part of their interaction. A two-shot frames two subjects within the same shot. It's great for highlighting character dynamics. And a point-of-view shot shows us what our character is seeing in first person. So we get to see from the same perspective of the character to better understand and relate to them. So now that we better understand what sort of angles and techniques can support our storytelling, let's look at how to actually animate our cameras in 3D to further support our narrative and communicate clearly with our audience. Now, with a lot of animators who don't have that much experience in animating cameras, they can tend to get a little over-enthusiastic and end up over-animating their camera, which has the opposite effect of what you're going for. You end up looking like a total noob. Keep it simple. A basic zoom could be all that your shot needs, or just a dolly in with a slight pan. Don't go balls to the wall with crazy rotation and translation. Similarly, keeping it simple helps you to minimize keyframes. Surely you've seen how much heavy lifting just using your graph editor or your curve editor in whatever animation software you're using, how much heavy lifting it can do without you having to over keyframe things. It's the same with camera animation. Utilize your graph editor as much as possible and try to minimize your keyframes. What you want are smooth movements, smooth curves, unless you're going for that jerky, handheld kind of camera vibe. But typically you don't want jerky camera animation. It's very off-putting. It can even give your audience motion sickness. While you're in here adjusting things, make sure you've got easing on your camera as well, so that there are no sudden stops or starts. It's very disorienting and unnatural. Think about your camera as an actual real-life object. I'll reiterate that. Same as you think of the characters or other objects you're animating. They have weight and need to build up to an action. It doesn't go from 0 to 100 straight away, unless, of course, you have a very specific reason to. But using anticipation and inertia, just like you do with your character animation, is going to go a long way here. A great way to animate your camera smoothly, something I use really often, is constraints. There are a few you can use, like the follow path constraint in Blender or the track 2 constraint. The follow path constraint is one I use really often. You have the camera animate along a path. You've got more control over the kind of route the camera is following, it looks smoother, and it's easier to make changes as well when you're not dealing with so many keyframes. So I've got an example for you here. I've drawn the path out. The camera will fly down from here and then through this little passageway. I'll add a follow path constraint to the camera and pick the path it needs to follow. Just a note, the camera needs to have no values on it, so make sure it's zeroed out or it won't follow the path nicely. Now if I change the offset, the camera moves along the path. You can key the offset, which works great for more simple animations, but I like to use evaluation time in the curved data because it's tied to the frames and gives more control. Offset is affecting the percentage along the curve that the camera is, not keyframes. I like to use the evaluation time for adjusting the speed it travels along the path, which you can also key for slower or faster motion at different points. It gives you more control over acceleration and deceleration and stuff like that than the offset does. Now with this path, you can also use a follow curve so that you don't have to manually key the direction the camera is pointing in as it follows the direction of the curve, but I do usually prefer to key the rotation myself for more control. There is also a track 2 constraint that you can use when you want the camera to stay looking at an object or character. So if you have your camera and you have your subject, add the track 2 constraint, and you see the camera now tracks to that object no matter where it moves. So you can combine this with a follow path constraint if you want the camera to animate around and still keep focus on something specific. You can place an empty at the point where you want the camera to be focusing, then use the track 2 constraint and pick the empty. Now let's look at the actual camera settings. Remember, think of your camera the same as a real-world camera. That's how you get your animations to look believable. So you should have at least a basic knowledge of camera settings, which I'm going to go through here for you. So here we have type. We've got perspective, which matches how you see things in real life. Objects closer to the camera appear bigger than objects further back. Parallel lines have a vanishing point where they converge in the distance. This is commonly what you'll use, but we do have the other options, which I'll look at once we've gone through these settings and what they mean. Focal length or field of view controls how much of the scene we see at once. Focal length is measured in millimeters, while field of view is in degrees. Using a wide-angle lens, which anything lower than 35 millimeters is good for wider scenes. They let us see more of the scene. You can see here it's also great for showing scale, but it sort of warps perspective the lower you go, which is great for some shots, but not for others, such as a close-up of a character's face. A higher focal length is better for that, as it distorts the features less. But a wide angle is great for drama or making objects or characters, buildings, whatever appear bigger. It's also nice for dynamic scenes. A standard lens, which most closely resembles the humanized perspective, is a 35 or 50 millimeter or within that range. It's got a good, balanced field of view with minimal distortion, and it's great for general purpose shots. A lens longer than 85 millimeters is often referred to as a telephoto lens. These are often used for character and close-up shots or macro shots. A long lens can also be great for certain scenes for cool and creative contrast in background and foreground element, as it reduces depth perception by making objects seem larger and more compressed. But again, the more extreme you go, the more warped the perspective. We have orthographic and panoramic settings as well, but those are not really commonly used, so you should only use them if you know what you're doing and have a very specific reason for doing so. Depth of field is really important for professional-looking shots that have depth and realism. It's great for guiding your viewer's eye to your focal point and for dramatic effects. If you turn depth of field on, you'll get these options. So for focus on object, can you guess? You pick the object you want to focus on. The focus distance option will then be grayed out because the focus distance is set to always be that object you picked. Otherwise, you can manually adjust the focus distance if you don't want it always locked on a specific object. You know, if you want to rack focus or something between two characters speaking, or draw the eye somewhere, or even for things like revealing something that had previously been hidden by the depth of field. It's an interesting technique to use and great for supporting your storytelling. Adjusting the f-stop here changes the amount of blurring, and lower values create a stronger blur effect. Blades are what affects the bokeh in your shot. You can also adjust the rotation and ratio to get the look you want. And now we have this camera setting over here. There are presets to choose from that mimic real-world cameras, and this is great when you're working with mocap footage or CG that has to match something you shot on a real camera. The presets are usually adequate. So TLDR or TLDW, camera angles and shot types are integral to storytelling. You can often use parenting or constraints to help you with your camera animation and getting it to look smooth and natural. Don't use sudden stops and starts unless you have a specific reason, and make use of your graph or curve editor to tweak your pacing. Wide-angle lenses can make scenes feel open or exaggerated. Telephoto lenses can create intimacy and focus on specific subjects. Use short focal lengths to emphasize depth, and use long focal lengths to compress space and flatten the scene. For character portraits or close-ups, use focal lengths of 85mm or longer to prevent facial distortion. When working with live footage where you're integrating your CG, match the focal length to the real-world camera specs. And that's it. So let me know if you want to learn more about 3D camera animation. I do have a bunch of Blender techniques that I like to use, so drop a comment and let me know if that is something you'd like to see in the future. Thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Sometimes just knowing that I have that support is what keeps me going with all of this. Thanks for watching. I hope it was useful. Bye!